Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Loftus with Data Meeting Services Group. Today we have a webinar, data governance webinar, using Elation for data governance, empowering data excellence, navigating data governance. Today it will be hosted by Dr. Salvador Barragan. You also have Patrick Loftus and Louis Rendon. So data meeting is for the agenda today. We're going to talk about who is Elation and data meeting, what is Elation, some trends and problems, active data governance through Elation, and a Q&A period at the end. So if we could hold all questions till the end, we'll have a Q&A period that we'll be able to kind of go through and have some interaction at the end. So data meeting is a full stack data analytics consultancy. So all the way from back-end data architecture to front-end visualizations and everything in between: cloud migrations, data warehouse, data migrations, and data governance, organizational change management. And today we're going to be speaking about a cloud catalog with a data governance aspect.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. My name is Louis. I'm here with Elation. About Elation, so we've been around since about 2012. At this point, we have over 500 plus customers spanning 35% of the Fortune 100 on the public sector side, cities, state governments, and federal agencies. We are a data catalog and governance platform focused on providing ease of use to the end user, so that we're enabling data users of all experiences and abilities to be able to use data the best way, and to keep yourselves within the guardrails of governance, to find, trust, and understand your information. And I'll turn it over back to Patrick.
So today we're going to be talking about people, process, and technology, the process part. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Salvador Barragan to really speak about the data governance aspect with Elation. So Dr. Salvador, please take it away.
Hey, thank you, Patrick. So I'm going to start before we get into the active data governance and starting to talk about Elation governance. Let's talk a little bit about some industry trends that we're seeing occurring right now within industry. So we're aware that right now there's a lot of issues around poor data quality, and it's been discovered that poor data quality is leading to a 12% reduction in revenue. This poor data quality also directly leads to problems in security and compliance by not only not having good quality of data, but also not knowing where the data is and not knowing what the proper security should be on that data that has the highest value. And as you've probably in the news, you're seeing constant breaches, right? We just had an MGM breach. We're having breaches at state government levels, at both at small city municipalities, all the way to state, all the way to federal agencies. And besides those security and poor data quality issues that we're having, we're also experience operational inefficiencies. These inefficiencies are leading to waste, and primarily they're around not being able to discover data and the right data at the right time. So the common data challenges that we're looking at really is a lack of data trust, data discovery problems, poor data quality, and understanding the data context, specifically for data scientists who need to understand that context in order to be able to decide what data fits what they need for what purpose. Now, on top of these industry trends, we're also seeing some headwinds and some that are occurring within the whole space. So we're all aware of ChatGPT, so that's nothing new. That's something that we're seeing new LLM engines come out every day. So we have Bard, I think the recent one from Elon Musk, I forgot the name of it, but so every day we're seeing these advances in AI and ML, and that's not making things easier from a data governance standpoint. While it may be better from an efficiency standpoint, with data, it is leading to problems around governance around that data. And obviously, we understand the privacy and compliance and security issues that we have. New laws and regulations are coming up every day. Several years ago, we had GDPR, then we had CCPA, and I think we're at CCPA 2 now in California. But these laws are now becoming not only obviously extra juridical in the sense that they're moving beyond just a region, and they're being applied across borders with countries. So compliance, privacy, security are becoming problems for data governance, and they're not going away. Obviously, they're expanding. Obviously, we still have a problem around rise of data ops, methodologies around that, specifically the life cycle of data. How long do we keep data? The issues around that, and obviously the standardization of data. So understanding that data and what it means across an organization is still a problem. So what are we offering from our end, both Alation and Data Meeting? So we've put together a data management solution bundle around the objective of how we use Alation within data governance. So from our standpoint, being able to create a unified view of data assets, ensuring that data handling procedures meet privacy, security regulations, and the governance requirements are probably the best way forward as in this space. So within that solution bundle, we have governance, we have metadata management, policies, end user training, and implementation. So through that, we're addressing some of the contextual issues around corporate objectives. So they're requiring and addressing organizations' need to speed up decision-making processes, meet regulatory compliance, and provide overview of who owns the data lineage, the usage of the data, et cetera. So some of the data governance challenges that we're addressing are around that data quality issue, how data is handled, knowing where the data is stored, how it's used, and who has access to it are really key areas around what we're trying to accomplish. So some of the outcomes and business value that we're seeing is faster data-driven decision-making, and easier access to reliable and organized data using Alation. Compliance and risk management is becoming easier, being able to understand the regulations and the data that needs to meet those regulations, and promoting that data-driven culture. So promoting the democratization of data, being able to use people being able to use data across a whole organization and understand that what that data means is primordial as we move forward. So some other key areas around our solution bundle, as I mentioned, some of them already. Number one, data discoverability. If you can't discover your data, you do not know and cannot do anything. So data discoverability is primary. Without that, you're not going anywhere fast. Secondly, it's the quality of the data. Can you trust that data? If you can't trust the data, you might as well not even have that data. So the trustworthiness of that data is very key. Now, along with data quality is data lineage. So being able to capture and understand the relationship of data across a whole pipeline from beginning to end. So all the way from the inception of data, where it's created, all the way to its where it's delivered, where it's used for analytics, where it's consumed, et cetera. So that whole lineage is extremely important. The fourth is the collaboration of the data, being able to provide feedback, curation of that data, extend the use of that data beyond its initial purposes, and to be used in other areas as well, in other domains. And lastly, but of vital importance is that data privacy compliance issue that we've talked about. Identifying that sensitive and PPI data for regulatory purposes is really something that is now becoming more and more important within the data governance and management space. Now, Alation, in terms of what it offers for governments and for higher ed, really it serves as a central hub for institutions, enabling collaboration throughout a whole organization. It streamlines the accessibility to that data, promoting transparency and making better informed decisions at the government level. And it's a vital tool for interpreting data and being responsive to the needs of your constituents. So these are key areas that Alation provides, specifically in these key three key areas. Now we also provide these same capabilities to the private sector, so these also obviously translate to the private sector as well. So let's talk a little bit about wasted time. So I talked a little bit about one of the key problems with the biggest problem we try to solve, and the biggest problem that organizations have is not being able to find the right data when they need it. So some of this has been translated, and statistically 90% of data analysts time is spent finding, cleaning, and organizing data with less than 10% on actual analysis. Now think about that for a second. If you spend 90% of your time just organizing your room and 10% just actually using your room for what it's meant for, it becomes a problem. This is a problem with data as well. So 90% using your time just for that is a lot of overhead, when 10% of what the true value comes from your data is you can see the imbalance there. We want to reverse that ratio, where 10% is finding, cleaning, and organizing the data, and 90% is being used on doing actual analysis. And so these ratios have to be turned around. If not, wasted time is just going to obviously impair an organization to move forward. So we have some more statistics around this. 37% of the analyst time is spent looking for that data. It's broken down to 26 hours per week spent on manual tasks around spreadsheets, and 60% of the analyst time cleaning and organizing that data. So altogether, you can see that this is problematic for organizations, and it's probably something that cannot continue. You don't want to be spending that much time that much money around just doing things that you don't want to be doing. You want to spend most of your money and time on that actual analysis, because that's what's going to improve both your efficiencies and your revenue going forward. So a little bit about data governance. Now, this is the area I'm going to really plunge into data governance, how Alation addresses data governance. So Alation has spent a lot of time developing a model. This model, and I'm going to show you how it's mapped to other frameworks already in the industry. But I want to go first over each of the sections very quickly, and then I'll show you how it's mapped to different frameworks, and then how it can be used within one of these frameworks. But in essence, this framework is broken down into 7 parts. These are 7 key areas that we feel that really address the needs of data governance, specifically around Alation. So obviously, the first one is establishing the governance framework. So that vision and mission and organizing people for your data governance, setting up the strategy is vitally important. Without that, you can't start any project. Anything is going to fail. Secondly, how you go about populating the data catalog. So here you set up your processes for ingesting your data, how the data is going to be analyzed, how you're going to determine its privacy details, et cetera, the characteristics around that. This in hand dovetails directly into how you empower the data stewards. So your data stewardship obviously is right here is the core of what you're going to be getting to in terms of what people are going to actually look at the data, how they're going to describe that data, how they're going to organize it, how they're going to identify if that data is relevant, if you can trust that data. So empowering your data stewards is vitally important for having a successful data governance program. So this leads directly into data stewards being able to curate the assets. So like I mentioned, documenting your data quality rules, describing if that data is trustworthy. So data stewards can deprecate data and decide, hey, you know what, we can't trust this data. And therefore that set off a response and a procedure to go forward and to address why that data is not trustworthy. Establishing data policies and standards around those assets, curating those assets in order to ensure that data constantly is being curated, that metadata is being added to it, making sure that the correct tags are applied to data. The next area is, once you've done that, is being able to develop policies and controls around your assets. So implementing those policies and controls. So Alation enables you to do that using different areas, the policy center, et cetera. Within Alation, that helps you develop workflows, helps you generate policies and controls around those data assets. The fifth is collaboration. So one of the issues that I think data catalogs have always had is the inability to collaborate across a whole organization. And I think that's what Elation does great. It enables its users in an organization to collaborate, to leverage all the knowledge within an organization, and it doesn't silo the data catalog. Some data catalogs that I will not mention have that. I think they have always had that issue. They're almost like an IT tool as opposed to something that can be used within a whole organization. And lastly, monitoring and measuring. So if you can't monitor and measure, you really don't know where you're at and where you want to be with your application, in this sense, Alation. So being able to monitor the analysis of the curated data, being able to measure the usage of your assets, and then assess the quality. And then you can create these in reports, and I'll show you a little. We have a screenshot of what that looks like within Alation. So I mentioned before that Alation's active data governance is a framework that has been developed from several areas. So I'm going to name a couple here. So DAMA, if people are familiar with, is that all-encompassing management framework that addresses many domains around data. DCAM is another popular framework, very built on having extensive language, extensive controls. DGI, another framework, and recently a new framework called Data Governance Framework, recently developed. So all these frameworks, active data governance has taken the best of these and really filtered them down to really give you something that can be applied and used very quickly within the context of Alation. Now, for the next part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the data governance framework and I'm going to show how Alation can be used to address each of the areas and domains of a framework. And you can do this with any framework, but I'm going to show just one for this presentation. But before I do that, I'm going to just address some of the goals of data governance and how Alation addresses them. So some of the goals around governance are, being able to define and organize your assets, having users trust that data, making sure that data is secure, making sure that data is integrated, that solutions are delivered correctly and at the speed of business, and making and understanding that organizations can adapt quickly and making sure that technology is there for that adaptation, including reducing total costs of management and storage. So Alation is aware of that. They're addressing this in 3 different ways: through business governance, technical governance, and compliance governance. So by maintaining the content quality and understanding of those assets, maintaining the attributes and data sources in the enterprise landscape, and maintaining the policies and classifications is how Alation is able to address the data governance goals that generally organizations have. And this really ties into what Patrick talked about earlier about people, process, technology, that Alation gives you that ability to address, obviously with the technology, with the platform, but also has that framework where you can address that process part, and then how the people are going to interact through that technology process triangle. So I'm gonna go through one of the frameworks here. I'm gonna go through each of the sections. I'm gonna give you a snapshot of what that looks like within Alation, and how Alation addresses this framework with each of the sections and domains. So the first section in this framework is the organization. So in this section, we have a data governance operating model, build out data strategy. Within that, we have roles, committees, responsibilities, decision rights that are needed. So the general goals within this section of the framework is defining the data domains, assigning ownership, defining business value and uses of the data, and building an operational plan. So how does Alation do that? So Alation designs a catalog around domains. That's how it develops it. It uses templates to organize those assets. And then once it's organized those domains and defined those data domains, you can assign that data stewardship, as we talked about. So once you've assigned that data stewardship, you can have those stewards interact with the data, really bringing that curation process into play. Once that is done, they also can use a business glossary to address the needs of the data, understanding the relationships between business needs and the value. And then they can also identify through logs, et cetera, what are the top users of that data. So who most likely is making the decision on that data, who consumes it the most, et cetera, who has most access to it. And so through these logs and through this integration, they can assign roles based upon those usage logs. And part of that also goes with combining with organization charts. They can facilitate the assignment of roles based upon within an organization. Looking at an organizational chart, they can decide, okay, this person may be the data owner, the data steward, or this person is the application owner, who more than likely will have a direct role to play with that data. But this area is how Alation would address those needs around an organization in defining roles. The next section is policies. So as we know, policies are extremely important. And for this section, policies are around data policy, alignment with other policies, developing communications plan, authoring access, usage, maintenance, retention, and storage. So the goals obviously are updating data policies. And this is one of the really strong suits of Alation. They have what's called a policy center. It's a central repository for all your data policies. This is where you can address access, usage, retention, security, and storage of data, where you can author those policies, and then not only author those policies, but directly tie those policies to your data sets that are defined by your data domains and controlled that way. So this is a key area, and it's a strong suit of Alation. Allows a really strong synergy between policies and your data. So that way you don't have to have a policy sitting outside of the application. It's directly tied into the application, and really then directs those policies on top of your data. Next area is procedures. So procedures is really important, obviously, because it's how you're going to manage some of your requirements. You're going to ensure responsibility for your tasks and the clarity of those tasks. So this is another area where Alation uses something that's called Alation articles. So you can document your processes related to data governance here, such as data classification workflows, different data ops. You can put your RACIs here as well. So you can have actually a central repository of what your processes are using Alation articles. So these are articles not only can be developed within Alation, but you can link them then directly to those policies we talked about. You can link them directly to data assets. So you can see the linkage between them. So when you bring up a procedure or a policy, you can see the direct links between, okay, here's how this policy is connected to a process or vice versa, and how that process affects a data set. And then in addition, you can add workflows, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which can further be useful in defining approvals. So if you have a workflow, you can also use that when you're initiating a process. So that way you can have even further control around a data asset through a policy and a procedure. The next step in this framework is standards and definitions. So here, terms and are defined. Data quality standards are developed as well. You see some. You can define your data dictionary, data models, etc. So some of the goals around this section are around definitions and standards for documented data, specifically around critical fields in a data set, or sometimes known as critical data elements. Also, system of record and system of references are defined. So this is where Alation's business glossary enables this to occur. You can define both your policies, rules, and it has KPIs, which allow you a really strong, friendly interface that allows you to really leverage machine learning, which is one of the Alation strong points. So you can automatically actually have Alation suggest business terms, identify stewards for you. As long as you obviously, if you pull that data in, you can also look at the data lineage that enables end-to-end understanding of data from source to use. So this enables not only understanding that, but also enables you to address how these objects, such as any terms or fields or schemas, can be defined and designed as you move forward. So this comes into obviously really handy for data governance because it allows you to audit that as well. So the next section in this framework is around architecture. So as we know, architecture, is something that's extremely important. It allows us to understand how data is almost the connection between data between systems, understands the procedures between systems and what data is being used, why it's being used, etc. So this is critical, obviously, for data governance for a variety of reasons. But how does Alation really get to this? So Alation has a very strong lineage capability, and this provides a really high level of your data landscape. So you can see how data is transformed and its relationship between system to system that Alation has actually pulled it and pulled the metadata from. So this really allows you to not only see the data, but actually build data models based using the most up-to-date data that you can get that you can see. In addition, you can set up rules that can automatically tag data assets. You can then take those assets and put different policies around it, protection policies, lifecycle policies, and from there you can actually document the procedures around the data, what you want to occur using articles, as we mentioned before, and then linking those articles back to those actual data sets. So you see one cohesive picture, not only a picture, but one cohesive process that you can around your data using both the lineage, data, the articles, as well as how those are defined and tagged. So how does next step is how does Alation support controls? So we know that controls are important, especially if in the security space, controls allow us to put processes around data, so that way, you can control who has access to the data, for example. That's one understanding of controls, but there are others, but Alation also has a strong ability to apply data admin and controls here. So the way Alation is able to do this very, very well is it uses what's called a query log ingestion. So it basically, when you go out and harvest your metadata and you pull also the query logs from the system of record that you're pulling that data from. And then what that does is it allows anybody, but specifically administrators who are more concerned about controls, to gain really visibility into how users are querying data, how they're joining data, how they're filtering data within that environment, and they're bringing that data into Alation. So from there, it's easy to set up policies and then build your controls within that. So, based upon understanding how that data is being used, you can really then write a policy in terms of in terms of usage, and if that usage really is aligned with your security policies and your security models, your privacy models, etc. And then Alation provides you already with templates around these models. So there's a security model template, there's a privacy template, and these templates can be, they're out of the box templates, so they really can assist organizations in addressing regulations, different classifications, programs, and assessments. And so what you can do is take those templates, apply those templates, and then implement those controls around those templates once you've implemented those initial template controls from design, from privacy and security. So data quality, how does Alation support data quality? So we all know that data quality is one of the key points that I talked about earlier. Obviously the first was discoverability. The second was data quality. So without data quality and without having data that you can trust, really it's inconsequential how much data you have. So within this area, one of the things we want to define is what kind of metrics we're going to be needing for continuous improvement of that data, understanding the risk of the data across its entire life cycle, and what kind of controls can be implemented. So how does Alation allow you to do that? So Alation Analytics is probably the key area around this area. It's an out-of-the-box capability that provides analytics and reporting capabilities that can help you track your governance metrics, which include your quality, your usage, and your policy compliance. So an example is you can actually, if you're a data steward or if you have the access to do it, you can actually deprecate a data set, or you can or a data domain, or a single data point. And so by doing that, you can then send messages out saying, hey, this data is not trustworthy. The status of it is definitely not something that should be used. And by doing that warning, you can, and that can be pushed to your analytics and your metrics. And they can be used in a data quality process to actually address why is that occurring. And so that could set off another whole set of processes around, okay, we have to address why that data is not trustworthy, and then you can move forward with that. So Alation gives you that ability to do that, which is a strong component. So one of the final points here is around audits. So we all know that audits is a key area, specifically with all the legislation coming out, the requirements that we have to meet around data, be it PCI or be it GDPR, as I mentioned, CCPA, Sarbanes-Oxley, et cetera. So Alation has a very robust way of allowing you to do this. So Alation, what they do, they have a governance dashboard. So this dashboard maintains a comprehensive audit trail around the interactions that occur with the data. So in this screenshot, you see, for example, the curation progress around data. So if you have a very low curation progress within like your certain data sets, you're probably not going to have very good governance around it. Because all you've done is taken the data and brought it into Alation, but you haven't done anything with it. So this allows you to track, okay, if only 3% of your assets are being curated, and you're probably going to have an audit problem going forward, because you don't know really the quality of that data. You don't know if the data is not defined. You don't know anything about that data. So one of this key dashboard here really helps you address those requirements around auditing by telling you, okay, this much has been curated, we need to move this forward. And then from that curation progress, you can actually then push that down to your data stewards and say, okay, who owns these different data sets? Who are the data stewards behind it? Are they responsible for curation? And now you really can start putting that governance in full speed, because now you can really get down to a granular level of, okay, this is how we're going to address these problems going forward, because now you have an audit trail being able to look at, okay, the progress of data, how much has been curated, who's responsible for it, and then make sure people are upheld and make sure that they address their responsibilities moving forward and follow best practices on that data. So that is it. And at this point, we're open for questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Looks like we have, what is the learning curve for data stewards, from Terry McCall?
I would say the learning curve is it's almost like Google, honestly, because Alation is almost like a Google-like appliance in essence, where your ability to look at your data governance dashboards, it's very intuitive. It tells you, okay, this is a curation process. This is what has not been done. This is what you're responsible for. And so if you've set up your policies and your processes and your data policy center and your data stewardship center, and you've done data stewardship before, it's quite simple. The Alation provides also training on that, and I've taken the training, and honestly, it's quite a couple hours, to be honest, to go through the training and then start playing with the environment. Yeah, anybody who's done data stewardship and understands the curation process, it's very intuitive.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? It looks like we have another question. It asks, how long prior to implementing some of these policies, should they start having a discussion on proper frameworks, policies, and roles and responsibilities?
I mean mm, that's I don't think there's one size fits all. And it depends on your organization and what the goals are. So some organizations will develop their for example, their data governance operating model and framework first. They'll do that first. They'll develop their their vision and so forth, their strategy. And so we have within the active data governance Alation's model, we do that first actually. So that's done first. So that goes before anything. Now policies, that there's a couple of schools of thought. Some people believe you do the policies after you've put in you've harvested your metadata, you start curating, you start seeing what issues and what problems you have, and then you develop your policies. Other people grandfather their policies in. Well, they'll take policies they've already developed and say, okay, we have to have this policy in place. Some state governments have that, for example. Some organizations have that. So it's one or the other, but it depends on your environment, your organization, your industry. So there isn't a right answer. If you're asking me what my preference is, my preference is to develop the policies beforehand. That's my preference, but that's not always the right course of action to take. But hope that answers your question.
All right, we got time for a couple more questions. Looks like we have a question. We have many data sources lacking metadata or data dictionaries. Can Elation help us to develop this documentation, or does that need to occur first?
No, Alation can help you. They have a AI capability where they'll recommend, as you pull that metadata in, they make recommendations in terms of your naming the terms in your data as they come in. So they do have an AI capability and they have an advanced AI capability they've just rolled in as well. I haven't seen that one yet, but I've heard that it's obviously taken that to the next level. So they do have those capabilities around AI. And so they obviously, if you understand a little about the LLM models, it's really around learning your data. So it obviously as it harvests more data, it's going to learn more and more. And so your recommendations are going to become better and better. That does not mean that excludes any human intervention. You always the human element obviously is required because they understand, especially if they have a lot of experience with the data, they're going to understand what best data is, what the golden records are, et cetera, right? What the critical data elements may be. They're going to understand their processes better. So you're going to need that. So within Elation, they have the data stewardship component. I showed you a little bit about the analytics around that. And that really gives you the capability to see, okay, when you are harvesting your metadata from all the different source applications, it really tells you the progress, where the progress is required based upon each data set, based upon each source application. So if you target the most important source applications and the most important data sets in the beginning of any project, any data cataloging project, and you're saying, okay, these are the most important, and your curation levels of curation are really low, you need, then at that point, that's obviously a red flag to go back to the data stewards or whoever you have put in that position to say, okay, what's going on? Is it because you don't have time? Is it lack of training? Is it what is the issue? So there's a couple of ways that Elation addresses it. One is from obviously developing those manual processes and workflows that you can do in Elation, and the other, and using Elation analytics, and the other part is using Elation's AI capabilities as well.
Thank you. We have another question. What are strategies and are there resources for building trust within the organization on sensitive data being included in the catalog?
Yeah, you can flag sensitive data inside of Elation so that they have that capability. So that's something that that security compliance aspect is inside of Elation. It's already built in. So making sure when you harvest that metadata, what metadata, as it brings in that metadata, it will know, obviously if it's been correctly tagged already, what data has to have a certain level of security. And then your security teams can then obviously look at that data using the data catalog and adding extra security or whatever security controls they have to add on top of that to specific data sets. So that is something that is built in within Elation.
Hopefully that answered your question. If not, feel free to add another. We have another question around data masking. If our data is protected HIPAA, for example, do we need to be concerned with how that AI is viewing and processing that data?
So the AI, from what I know, is making recommendations. So it's assisting in the curation process of your metadata. It's not exposing that data unless you're allowing it to be exposed. So if the data that you don't want to be exposed has the right controls, the right access controls within Elation, and it's obviously bringing those controls in and adding those or additional controls, then that should not be a problem. So the use of AI here is really around expediting and improving the ability to curate your data by giving recommendations based upon learning from the data. It's not exposing anything if those controls are not allowing you to expose it.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any additional questions? We have about 15 minutes left. Well, those were some great questions. We definitely appreciate everybody's time. We will go ahead and feel free to reach out if you guys have any additional questions on these subjects. Our contact information is on the slides. Luis Randazzo from Alation, Salvador Barragan from Data Meeting, and Patrick Loftus from Data Meeting. We appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend and happy Friday.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody.